Welcome to Child Protection Training Course for Churches. Regardless of your role, you are an important person in the life of all kids in the church. Your activities influence them, make a mark on them, allow them to learn and grow in a safe sanctuary. This training is modeled from books by Joyce Thornburg Melton, Reducing the Risk of Child Abuse in the Church. So why do we train our volunteers? This is to make awareness of abuse and neglect against children and youth more visible, to reduce the risk of abuse to children and youth, to protect our volunteers from being placed in situations that may be viewed as inappropriate. In this training, we present this as a three-legged stool. This protects children, it protects workers, and it protects the churches. We do this to acknowledge that child abuse is our problem and follow our call to protect children and youth. Child abuse happens every day, everywhere, and it's non-discriminatory. And so you need to understand that in your role working with youth, you're going to encounter a youth that may have an issue that needs to be talked about. So we want to create an environment that fosters safety, structure, and the nurturance that children need for healthy development. It's critical that adults understand that part of it. We also want to provide a safe environment for individuals to receive the love of Christ. So why do we have a policy? Remember that your church is thought of as a safe haven. This is a place that every parent should feel very comfortable letting their kids be dropped off, be active in youth groups, in Sunday school classes, and be free of abuse and neglect anytime they're within the walls. It is a sanctuary. It takes just one instance to ruin a church's reputation. There are headlines every day of things that happen in various churches around the world that has caused them to have major setbacks. Whether they're true or false, it sometimes is irrelevant. Church's reputation is going to be put to question, and we want to avoid any misconceptions that are out there, and that there is definitely a misconception that churches don't need a policy because it's full of good people. But we need to understand what happens when or if something does happen. So how does God call us to respond? So God says we are called to nurture, protect, and advocate for all children. In Matthew 10:18 says, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven." And in Psalms 127:3, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward." And in Mark chapter 9, verse 42, "Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a great millstone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the depths of the sea." Those scripture verses make it very clear our obligation to children and what God expects us to do to bring them to Him. So, you need to know the facts. There are over 3 million children that are reported annually for child abuse and neglect in the United States. In Indiana, the updated numbers are 196,138 calls in 2024. That actually resulted in 215,149 reports being generated to go out to the counties for consideration for assessment. And you also need to understand that 1 out of 3 girls are sexually abused before the age of 18. That is a staggering number. By statistics, similarly, 1 out of 7 boys have been sexually abused. But it's also needs to be noted that boys don't talk. They're less likely to share information. They're not going to tell their best friend, a trusted adult, a teacher, or anything else if something has happened to them. So it's likely that the boys' stat is closer to the girls' statistic. And about 2,000 deaths a year in the United States come from abuse or neglect. In Indiana, the average is about 50 deaths a year from abuse and neglect. So that equates to 8,219 children abused per day, 343 every hour, and 6 every minute. Physical abuse is any non-accidental physical injury to a child that's caused by a parent or a caregiver that results in or threatens serious injury. Oftentimes, parents who physically abuse their children do not intend to seriously injure them, but get carried away by anger and frustration in their own lives. This includes injuries as a result of a parent's failure to take appropriate action to prevent the injury. Some of the indicators do include those unexplained bruises, marks, cuts, welts, burns, fractures, and even dental and oral injuries to a child. The definition of neglect is the failure of a parent or guardian to provide a child with adequate food, clothing, shelter, medical care, education, or supervision. Neglect is a broad category in Indiana, and a lot of categories fall into the definition of neglect. From doctors' offices reporting things that they see of nutrition, and including broken bones, things that were inflicted by somebody that are non-accidental. Physical indicators do include on a small child, an infant, flat bald spots on their head, sometimes dirty or smelly child. Schools report those things where those kids actually become targeted because they do come to school smelling, and many times schools are proactive in trying to help that child lead a normal life at the school, but they are coming in with dirty, inappropriate clothing. They don't have on appropriate clothing for the weather, shoes that are too big, too little. Oftentimes those children will have developmental lags, sometimes related to nutrition. The child may be underweight. The chronic condition often resulting from this is not from poverty, but from a lack of knowledge on the parent's part regarding proper care for children or household management. And so some of our role includes being able to educate a parent on what resources are out there and how do we help them. And as a church body, we have lots of resources. And so how do we learn a little bit about some of these families' needs and not push them away, but let them know that they have a loving support within their church that they can go to and talk to and find a better way for their own family. Neglected children may be constantly hungry, tired, grossly unclean, underweight, or abandoned. And in the church, sometimes in Sunday school classes and vacation Bible schools, you'll see those kids that are withdrawn. You will see those kids that are the ones that may hoard food. They may want to take an extra handful of crackers or whatever it may be. And sometimes when they're asked about it, they'll say, "This is for my brother. I want to take something to somebody that's at home." And so that's some indicators that there's something missing for them. They also may suffer delays or even retardation in their growth and development due to the lack of good nutrition, sleep, and medical care. Many times these children will come to church in these settings very tired, sick, and again, our obligation might just be to ask questions and see how we can help. Sometimes it's just that we do need to take them and give them a snack. Sometimes they may need to sleep. A neglected child, if left unsupervised, may injure themselves, start a fire, wander away from home, or otherwise come to some harm. And that's unintentional on the parent's part many times, but a child that's not capable of being unsupervised can make very big mistakes that can lead to severe consequences for themselves and siblings. The next category is sexual abuse. Terms often associated with sexual abuse include child exploitation, child molest, incest, if the abuser is a member of the child's family, child pornography. Sexual abuse is the abuse of a child for sexual gratification by an adult or older child in a position of power or permitting another person to do so. In today's environment, we hear a lot about trafficking, and that could also include trafficking, where they're allowed and encouraged to do things by somebody else that's in a position of power or authority over them. Children that are being sexually abused oftentimes you may observe them demonstrating inappropriate sexual behaviors. Sometimes an illness, frequent urination, and even a fear of going to the bathroom. Within the church, sometimes that child is going to be hesitant to want to walk into a room with adults or people that are unknown if they're the leaders, the teachers, the adults in the classroom. And those are some of those signs that you may start to notice that something is a little bit different about a certain child. With child sexual abuse, it's rarely a violent thing. Normally, the abuser is somebody the child knows. The child may have been groomed by somebody for quite some time, and usually it's somebody that has access to the child. Sexually abused children rarely show any clear physical signs of sexual abuse. They may show behavioral signs of sexual abuse, which include abrupt changes in their usual behavior. They may also be exhibiting nightmares, bedwetting, a sudden fear of a person or place, or increased sexual behaviors. And that can be at all different ages. And the last category is emotional abuse or psychological abuse. Emotional abuse is a tough category to substantiate in the child protection world. It usually requires a psychologist or a therapist to testify that the actions that this child is exhibiting are a result of the act of a caregiver that has emotionally abused them. It's that chronic attitude or even the acts of the caregiver that are detrimental to the child's development. And so the child does not have that sound, healthy personality that they should have for those developmental milestones. Some of the kids that have these behaviors exhibit things such as eating disorders. They'll have elimination problems, sleep problems. They are sadistic, suicidal acts even, and reports of emotional abuse. So there'll be things said. They'll talk about it even because to them that's normal, but they also repeat it. They'll use these words. They'll call people out. And so those are things that we need to watch out for with our kids because there's something else going on. And as a church body, that gives us that opportunity to understand, wait a minute, I need to step in here and ask some more questions. And sometimes you got to be careful not to lead a child or interview a child, but just in building that relationship with a kid, you get that chance to be that person for them that they trust. And it may take a while, but if they trust you, they'll trust you going forward. And they need that. Every child needs that. We'll talk briefly about abandonment. Abandonment is a child that has been left somewhere. The parent's identity or whereabouts are typically unknown. Occasionally, though, a parent will drop a child off with a friend, a family member, a neighbor, and let them know, hey, I'll be back tomorrow. Can you watch Johnny for a little bit? And they never come back. That is also abandonment because that child and the ability to care for that child has been taken away. Sometimes the child's left in circumstances where the child suffers then serious harm, or the parent has failed to maintain any contact and it's just kind of disappeared. And so that is where law enforcement will come in. But Child Protection Services also at that time have to make some decisions about permanency for this kid. Where does this child need to be? What relative and family do they have available to them? And do they need any coercive intervention of the courts to provide for the child? In Indiana, we have safe haven laws, which allows for the free will abandonment of an infant up to the age of 60 days. There are the safe haven laws allow you to drop off at a safe location, a law enforcement agency, fire stations, medical facilities, hospitals, and there are in Indiana now over 100 baby boxes. Oftentimes they're on a wall, outside wall of a fire station, and a parent can place their baby in that box. When they close the door, a silent alarm goes off to alert medics that something is in that a baby has been placed in that box. And then they fully, at that point, relinquish their rights by law to any further claims with that child. Indiana gets quite a few of those each year. Currently, I believe that number's to be about 20 a year, and that's a really great thing for a stressed parent that has otherwise may have made a poor decision on what to do with that child. So what can lead to child abuse? These are just a few of the triggers, but stressors in the family, oftentimes financial stressors, cause parents and caregivers to become a different person, if you will. They can become more agitated, maybe even violent, sometimes through the loss of a job They may also lose their automobile, their transportation, sometimes their homes. Those things are all major stressors on a family. Relational issues then also become big stressors. Relational issues with spouses, parents, their own family. Mental health, of course, is another really big issue for all of us. And so people with mental health issues, sometimes as they go through some of their highs and lows, those are those opportunities, if they don't have a good support system, that kids could become a little bit in danger of something happening. Clearly, substance abuse is something we've seen as a society for the last 10 years with heroin, meth, narcotics, prescription drug abuse. All of those things have really caused parents to make those poor decisions, because that addiction is a piece of the mental health diagnosis. And because of their addiction, they choose that over their own children. Sometimes there's a lack of perceived support system. And so, they just don't think there's anybody out there that can help them. I would offer that within any of our churches, within those walls, we have nearly everything that could help a family. We just have to be willing to step up and understand that this is going to be a longer walk, a tough walk, but we have the ability. And I encourage every member that's listening to this and every church to think about, how do we help everybody that walks through that door to become more successful, a better parent, and ultimately create a legacy for their children. And if we can do that with the love of Christ, then we've really had a successful involvement with a family. And of course, history, parents that were abused, mentally, physically, sexually, those are things too that sometimes they just believe that's kind of how it is. And that's not a bad way of raising a kid, because that's how it happens. And so sometimes we've got to break the cycle and help parents understand that there are better ways and appropriate ways to handle discipline and relationships. So some of the signs that you'll know something's wrong. Children may talk to us and tell us about a difficult situation they're experiencing. Sometimes as a youth leader, you may be shocked. What a child may just openly say out loud to you. It may be crass, it may be crude, it may involve cuss words, it may involve something sexual. Sometimes kids just say it, they just talk. And when we're in a church setting and they realize that it's a safe place, that may be that moment that they are touched and realize that I can share this, and I want somebody to know what I've been going through. We may observe a difficult interaction between an adult and a child, and sometimes that is the piece that we really look at and think, gosh, what just happened there, and why was that, and what can we do? There's something else going on. Behavioral issues with child. Every kid has behavior issues at some point in time, but what about those chronic things that you see with some kids? And so is there more going on? And the physical concerns in a child. So what are those physical pieces that you see? Bruises all the time on a child really are not normal. Sometimes they can be explained away, but many times, depending on locations, those outward signs are really the thing that makes you want to ask more questions. You don't ever want to ask a child to take off his shirt so you can see, whether or not they have bruises on their stomach or back or higher up on their arms. But you can talk about things about it in a safe way, and that's a part of our role in all of this, is to know how to do that. So what happens when you see something? I encourage you to quickly talk to the ministry leader, whatever area you are in the church. Talk to the person over that area. Sometimes they will have also recognized things. They may also know a little bit of the story of the family and be able to give you some tips. I encourage you to speak with the appointed church representative. In our case, is our senior pastor, and the senior pastor can always guide you to other resources, encourage you to make a decision about what you can do personally. Absolutely no one is to speak to the media except for our senior pastor or an appointed person by him. That is really critical, because when things get said to the media and the news crew is sitting outside of the church because of something that they've been told about and they want a story, you got to make sure that we got one spokesperson and that the story is the story that we need to tell. So any reports that need to be made, child abuse reporting reports, They can, and it's encouraged that they be made with the appointed church representative present. They'll sit with you, make that report, and help you understand what happens next. The child abuse hotline phone number is 1-800-800-5556. So when you call, they will ask you a lot of questions. You do not have to have this information. They'll take as little or as much information as you have. They will ask if you know the child's name, his age, or his or her age, date of birth, any contact information you have for the child, if you know their address, their phone number, any emergency numbers, where the child is currently located, who is the alleged perpetrator, who is it you believe has done something to the child, and specifically, what are those things that's happened? What is it you've seen that you have concerns about? So they're going to ask you for as much information from the child and about the incident or from prior incidents that you've been made aware of and you can share. They can go with very little information at times and get to a point of being able to at least talk to a family member or the child to create a safety plan. So going beyond the state's requirements to respond to allegations, we must respond to the victim. And we need to do that in a Christ-centered way. We must respond to the victim's family. Again, how do we do that and maintain the focus on Christ? We also may have to address and respond to the person that's been labeled the abuser, the person that has the allegation against them. That person is innocent until proven guilty. But however, within the church walls, we also have to make sure that if that person is walking in our doors, that we understand we need a safety plan. And in our home church, that has happened in the past where we've made sure that if someone is there that we have any kind of concern about, they're aware of what we are doing because they're part of that planning. They may know that they can enter the sanctuary through a certain door, and that they're to leave only through a certain door, that they may not be allowed in the children's wing, they may not be allowed in the youth building, and those are all part of the plan. And so the people that are involved in that plan are the only ones that need to know it, but it may involve ushers, it may involve trustees, it may involve teachers, but those are the people that are part of figuring this thing out to make sure that we can keep the victim and the victim's family safe. Rumors fly, and we want to make sure we don't encourage any of that. We also got to remember that our own insurance company is also needs to be aware of these things, and these incidents can be very costly to our conference. We have an obligation to them to make them aware, to follow their rules and regulations, and again, all of these things can be very costly in more ways than just financial. So, not necessarily if, but when it happens, again, the safety of the victim must be the church's top priority. We will never confront the abuser with anger and hostility. That can be a very difficult, challenging thing in a church if that person that is the alleged abuser walks in our doors. And so we have to make sure that people understand, as much as they may feel something stirring in them that's hostile, it is not their place or their right to say anything. And to understand that that person has a right to be in our church as well. They're loved by the same God that we are. But we also know that if they are working with youth, we will immediately remove him or her from any further involvement with our children and youth until things are cleared or the situation is more fully understood. So this is really important. Just remember, the child victim is never, ever, ever responsible for causing the abuse. And the victim is never to be blamed for the abuse. Sometimes you'll hear that they want to blame the child for the way they dressed, the way they looked, their own actions that led to a 14, 15, 16-year-old child, 17-year-old child cannot be the reason that something happens to them, regardless of what they may have said or done, or even how they dressed. They are not capable. Child victim is never capable of consent to abusive behavior, either legally or morally. Child sexual abuse is always wrong and solely the responsibility of the abuser. So let's talk about the review of our policy. Level 1 service is for those that are potentially going to be working alone with children and youth. We really encourage that we always have an open door policy if you're working one-on-one. Make sure that you're not behind a closed door. Again, this is to protect you It protects that child, and it protects the church. We never would want the child to say something to somebody that was an innocent hug that was said in some other way that turned into a rumor that turned into, oh my gosh. And so you always want to make sure you're thinking about what could go wrong. So, and for that reason, we really prefer that everybody has somebody else with them when working with a youth, particularly if it's a small number of youth. Background checks and training are required, and the level 1 service folks can oversee level 2 and anybody that we need in an urgent need volunteer. Level 2 service are those that are not yet have been screened, but they've not yet been trained. In that scenario, they must adhere to a 2 volunteer rule. And again, 2 or more volunteers are present with a child or a group of children, and one of the 2 must be a level 1 or level 2 or a trained youth volunteer. The trained youth volunteer can be an 8th grade or older youth. They also must attend the training, and they complete a questionnaire that the parents also sign a consent form. And they always follow the 2 volunteer rule at all times. Urgent need volunteers are recruited or placed in service in a time of urgent need. Sometimes those things just happen. Somebody at the last minute can't be there, and we've got a bunch of kids and we need help. And so we'll grab a volunteer to assist in those times. A lot of times they may not be screened or even trained, but we make sure they're partnered with people that are level 1 or level 2 volunteer. All of our drivers must be 21 years of age. Their placement as a supervisor of children and youth is placed in the discretion of an employee or level 1 volunteer in charge of the event. Every volunteer working with children will complete a nationwide background check, as well as a background check through the local Department of Child Services. Background checks must be completed every 2 years, and we'll keep this information that is accurate and updated in all of our volunteers. Adults convicted of child abuse and those with a history of inappropriate conduct will not be employed, and they will not be allowed to volunteer at any church-sponsored event for our minors. The church family will still continue to minister to those that have been convicted or have a history of inappropriate behavior, with safety being our primary focus. Adult survivors of abuse will receive love and acceptance from our church family. Many times this training and other training similar to it stir a lot of emotions for adults that have lived through this, but they can be a great resource to our children and our families. So some tips to be aware of. Keep an eye out around your surroundings. When you're teaching, when you're in the church, when you're just volunteering, keep your eyes open. If something looks strange, keep an eye on it. Be aware of surroundings. Always establish a safe and structured environment. Hugs and touching are not safe for everyone, and that's kind of a biggie. And so side hugs, an arm around the shoulder of a child, is usually pretty safe. Some kids will run up and give you a hug, and that's okay. But just keep in mind that some kids are really uncomfortable with that. Some adults are uncomfortable with that. So we must look at each situation individually. If in doubt about a situation, speak up. We have the ability to create safety or create harm for our children in our care. Not showing up, not attending to the job, and not maintaining structure can lead to physical and emotional harm. So it's up to each of us to make sure that we have a safe space for our kids. The message we send: children are moldable, and they're very easily influenced. They're able to learn very quickly. The way we behave, dress, model ourselves, and interact with others will send a message to these children. They are watching you. They're listening to you. They will copy you. And so as adults, and especially adults within the walls of the church and with our youth outside of the church, we got to make sure that we're showing God's love, that we're really creating an environment that lets them know that, hey, this is a guy or a lady that I want to be like when I get older. And so what they're seeing is something that is really godly. We want children to know they're loved by Christ. They're also loved by us, that they are very special, and also that they have great gifts and they can be proud of and use as they grow. And sometimes as adults and as the leaders, we need to make sure we point out those gifts. Let them know that I see this in you. I've seen what you just did with this child and the love you showed, the words you used. You're going to be a great teacher. You're going to be a future doctor. You're going to be somebody special because you have gifts that were given to you by God, and I see that in you. And we do all this by being safe, by being reliable, being consistent, and always being Christ-focused. Some of the emergency procedures, specifically, these are for the Delphi Methodist Church, but in case of a fire or earthquake, those in the children's wing should exit the front of the building through the door by the children's treehouse near the check-in desk and proceed straight out the sidewalk to the right, and there's the dumpster area in front of the building. If you're in the nursery, place the infants and children in the rolling cribs. Roll those cribs and the children out at the same time through the same door by the children's treehouse, by the check-in desk, and again proceed down the sidewalk and to the dumpster area in front of the building. If there happens to be a fire in the teen center, the youth should gather in the front of the storage barn across the driveway. In the event of a tornado, the entire church should gather in room 211. That is a concrete walled building room, and we want everybody to go in there. All of the infants and children in the nursery were placed in cribs and wheeled into room 211. 211 is the room across the hall from the nursery beside the kitchen. Those in the teen center will also travel to room 211 inside the main church building. So, in today's environment, this is something unfortunately we have to talk about. But in the case of a disgruntled or aggressive person, those in the children's wing will proceed out the hallway, and you'll exit at the back of the building, which is the west side exit by the preschool room and the children's restrooms. They will proceed directly behind the building to take cover behind the huge dirt mound. So if you ever are looking behind the building, there's a hill behind our church. It's a dirt mound that we mow and take care of. But at that point, then, when you're behind that, you should walk along the dirt and proceed then to the youth building. Those in the nursery should lock both nursery doors. Take the children into the nursery bathroom and or the nursery storage closet. They should also lock those doors so they can lock themselves into that part of the building securely. And those in the youth building should proceed out the back door, which should be the north exit, and go to the baseball field at the high school. At that point, they should take cover under bleachers or in dugouts. So what's next? You got 3 more steps. If you didn't get to this video by viewing the 4-step process, you can find them on our church website at delphimethodist.church. Click on Ministries, click on Children's Ministry, scroll all the way to the bottom to find all 4 steps. These steps again include filling out a Google Doc, doing an online background check through the organization we use called Trusted Employees. Note that the link for these expire after 7 days, so it's important to do it right away. You'll also be given a packet that has 2 documents for you to fill out and 2 for you to keep. We ask that you return these as soon as possible. If you have any questions, reach out to me. My name is Gil Smith. My email address is gilsmith396@msn.com. We thank you very much for taking the time to do this, to listen to this training, and for serving in the children's and teen ministries. You will be a blessing to the children, and we are so thankful for each one of you for having a heart for kids and a desire to share Christ's love in everything that you do.